If an avoidant person genuinely loves you, the first thing you usually feel is not comfort, it is emotional tension. Not because the connection lacks meaning, but because it matters enough to awaken fears they spent years trying to suppress. At first, the bond feels magnetic. There is a strange sense of familiarity, emotional depth, and calm that feels difficult to explain. You begin feeling closer to them in ways that seem effortless. Then suddenly, just when the relationship starts feeling real and stable, they shift. They become distant, harder to understand, more guarded. That sudden withdrawal is the point where most people assume everything is falling apart. But in reality, that is often where the deeper story truly begins. With avoidant individuals, love rarely unfolds in a smooth or predictable way. It tends to move in cycles. One moment they are emotionally present, the next they retreat. They move closer, then farther away. They open up, then shut down. If you do not understand the psychology behind this pattern, it is easy to mistake fear for rejection. You start believing the connection is dying, when in many cases it is actually being challenged by emotional vulnerability. One thing appears again and again in strong avoidant connections. The bond keeps resurfacing, not perfectly, not consistently, but it returns. And every return carries meaning. So when someone repeatedly leaves and comes back, do not focus only on the separation itself. Pay attention to what the separation is revealing. Notice what changes after they return. Because sometimes the relationships that survive are not the ones that begin with certainty. Sometimes they begin with confusion, silence, emotional distance, and a connection neither person can completely let go of. Usually, the connection begins with an intensity both people feel almost immediately. There is emotional depth that develops faster than expected. Conversations feel unusually honest. Time together feels different from past experiences. Even the avoidant recognizes this internally, though they may never admit it directly. Instead, they hide behind mixed signals, humor, distractions, or silence. But deep down, they know the bond is not casual. Around you, they feel emotionally exposed in a way they are not used to. They feel comforted, yet vulnerable at the same time. Safe, but also deeply seen. And that combination can trigger fear faster than peace for someone with avoidant tendencies. Often, they are not truly afraid of you. They are afraid of what loving you awakens inside them. Fear of dependency, fear of emotional exposure, fear of needing someone too deeply and eventually getting hurt. Fear that once the feelings become strong enough, they will lose the emotional control they have relied on for years. That is why the withdrawal often begins the moment the connection becomes meaningful. Their behavior changes. Communication slows down. Their warmth becomes inconsistent. One day they feel deeply connected to you, and the next day they seem emotionally unavailable. That shift can feel painful and personal. It feels like something beautiful is slipping away. But the distance itself is important to understand because it often does not mean the feelings disappeared. Sometimes it means the feelings became too powerful for them to process comfortably. Most people react to this change by panicking. They chase harder. They try to force clarity, reassurance, or emotional certainty. They over-explain, over-give, and over-analyze. They try to close the emotional gap through effort and urgency. And while that response is understandable, it usually creates more pressure for the avoidant person. The more emotionally cornered they feel, the more they retreat. The more they sense demands placed on the connection, the more trapped they become internally. Everything begins changing when your response changes. When you stop reacting from fear and begin responding from emotional balance and self-respect. You stop turning every moment of silence into proof that you are unloved. You stop chasing someone every time they emotionally disappear. Instead, you remain grounded, calm, clear, emotionally steady. This is not manipulation or emotional coldness. It is maturity. For the avoidant person, this creates an entirely new emotional experience. They begin realizing that closeness with you does not automatically lead to pressure or emotional suffocation. They feel your care without feeling controlled by it. They feel connected to you while still feeling emotionally free. And for someone who has always associated intimacy with losing independence, that experience feels unfamiliar and deeply important. Then the cycle begins repeating itself, but differently. They pull away for a while, then slowly return. Sometimes carefully, sometimes hesitantly, sometimes offering only small pieces of warmth at first. This is where many people become confused, because a return alone does not automatically mean progress. It only means the connection still exists emotionally. The real question is whether the pattern itself is evolving. When the relationship is genuinely moving toward growth, every return carries small but meaningful changes. The silence does not last as long. The walls lower a little faster. The conversations become slightly more honest. Their emotional presence becomes more stable. They may still become afraid, but they no longer run as far. They may still need space, but they stop disappearing in the same destructive way. This is the part many people overlook because they expect transformation to happen dramatically and all at once. But with avoidant individuals, healing often happens slowly and quietly. Small shifts matter deeply. A quicker response matters. A softer tone matters. A vulnerable conversation matters. A sincere apology matters. Increased consistency matters. Pay close attention to whether the cycle is changing or merely repeating. If every return leads back to the exact same emotional pain without deeper honesty, effort, or accountability, then the relationship is trapped in repetition. But if each cycle brings more openness, more self-awareness, and more willingness to remain emotionally present, then the bond is slowly evolving into something healthier. Over time, the avoidant begins learning something they once struggled to believe. They start realizing that intimacy does not automatically erase their identity. Closeness does not always lead to control. Love does not always end in emotional danger. This realization is massive for someone whose nervous system learned to associate vulnerability with loss of safety. And this lesson is rarely learned through words alone. It is learned through repeated emotional experiences. They pull away, but the relationship does not explode. They ask for space, but they are not punished for needing it. They return, and instead of chaos, they are met with emotional steadiness. Gradually, their nervous system begins trusting what their mind once resisted. Little by little, their defenses begin lowering. Not through one dramatic moment, but through small acts of emotional courage. A longer conversation, a more honest response, a softer expression, a decision to stay emotionally present during discomfort instead of immediately escaping from it. That is how real growth usually happens in avoidant relationships. Quietly, slowly, one emotional risk at a time. And sometimes the strongest relationships are not the ones that begin perfectly, but the ones where two people slowly learn how to stop running from the very connection they were always searching for. One of the clearest signs they are thinking about you, even during periods of silence, is their quiet return toward connection. Maybe it shows through a message that feels more genuine than before, a softer tone in their voice, or a subtle willingness to let you see emotions they normally hide from everyone else. These moments may seem small on the surface, but they matter deeply. This is how trust is usually built in avoidant connections, not through dramatic declarations, but through repeated moments of quiet openness over time. If you pay close attention, you begin noticing that their distance no longer feels as cold or cutting as it once did. When they come back, it carries more sincerity. Their presence feels less guarded. There is a softer emotional honesty beginning to appear beneath the surface. And although these changes can feel subtle, subtle does not mean insignificant. In fact, the quietest emotional shifts are often the ones that reveal the deepest transformation. But while they are slowly changing, something equally important is happening inside you. This connection is not only challenging the avoidant person, it is challenging you too. It is asking whether you can love someone deeply without losing your own identity in the process. It asks whether you can remain emotionally open without becoming desperate for reassurance. It asks whether you can care deeply without turning that care into emotional dependence. At the start, you may have unconsciously wanted their love to become the thing that finally made you feel secure. You may have hoped their consistency would calm every fear inside you. But as the connection matures, your understanding begins changing. You slowly realize your emotional peace cannot depend entirely on whether they are emotionally available one day and distant the next. You stop measuring your worth through their changing energy. You stop falling apart every time their mood shifts or their fear rises to the surface. Instead, you begin building something stronger inside yourself, your own emotional center, your own stability, your own grounded sense of identity. This does not mean you stop loving them. It means you stop abandoning yourself while loving them. You become calmer, more emotionally balanced, less reactive to every silence or withdrawal. You become more honest about your feelings, but less controlled by the ups and downs of the relationship itself. And this shift changes everything because avoidant individuals can only sustain closeness with someone who remains emotionally rooted in themselves. If you completely lose your boundaries, your confidence, or your self-respect inside the connection, the relationship eventually becomes emotionally overwhelming for both people. But when you stay connected to yourself, something healthier begins forming. The relationship starts breathing instead of suffocating under fear. The dynamic slowly changes from emotional survival into emotional choice. You are no longer silently saying, "I need you here to feel okay." Instead, your energy becomes, "I care about you deeply, but I am still whole within myself." That difference is powerful. It changes the emotional atmosphere between both people. And honestly, this is the point where weak connections usually collapse, while stronger ones begin proving their depth. There is an uncomfortable truth many people avoid facing. An avoidant person cannot build a lasting relationship with someone who constantly tries to rescue them, heal them, or force emotional readiness before they are capable of it themselves. And in the same way, you cannot build something healthy with an avoidant if you make their fears your personal responsibility to carry. That is where many intense relationships break apart. One person becomes the pursuer, the other becomes the runner. One overfunctions emotionally, while the other emotionally disappears. One person carries the emotional weight of the entire relationship, while the other feels increasingly pressured and trapped. But when the connection is genuinely evolving in a healthy direction, both people slowly begin moving toward the middle. The avoidant starts becoming more accountable for their own patterns, maybe not perfectly, but noticeably. They become more conscious of their tendency to shut down emotionally, more honest about needing space, less likely to vanish without explanation, more willing to admit when fear is influencing their behavior instead of pretending nothing is wrong. At the same time, you begin growing too. You stop treating every difficult moment like an emergency that must immediately be fixed. You stop interpreting every pause as rejection. You begin understanding the difference between genuine intuition and anxiety-driven fear. You learn how to give space without emotionally disconnecting yourself completely. You remain loving without becoming controlling. And this middle space is where real emotional transformation finally begins. Not through dramatic promises, not through emotional chasing, not through endless explanations, but through steady emotional maturity from both sides. This process is not flashy or cinematic the way people often imagine love to be. In fact, real growth inside avoidant relationships usually looks quiet. It looks like two people gradually learning how to stay emotionally present without running from themselves, or each other. And perhaps the most important part of all is this. Healthy love does not ask either person to disappear. Not you, not them. Real love creates space for both people to exist fully as themselves while still choosing connection. It allows closeness without emotional imprisonment, freedom without emotional abandonment, vulnerability without shame. That is the deeper lesson hidden underneath these kinds of connections. Sometimes the relationship is not only teaching the avoidant person how to stay, sometimes it is teaching you how to remain grounded while loving someone deeply. And when both people begin learning those lessons at the same time, the connection slowly transforms from emotional chaos into something far more stable, honest, and real. It is not loud or dramatic, but it is real. And real love often looks far quieter than fantasy, while carrying far more depth than fantasy ever could. Healthy growth inside a relationship rarely arrives through grand speeches or perfect moments. Most of the time, it reveals itself through subtle emotional shifts that only become visible when you stop focusing on intensity and start paying attention to consistency. If this connection feels familiar to you, then listen carefully, because the next stage is the one that reveals whether the bond is simply repeating old pain or slowly becoming emotionally safe enough to survive long term. Eventually, there is a turning point. And most people almost miss it because they expect transformation to look dramatic. But usually it arrives quietly. One day you realize they are not disappearing as far as they once did. The silence that used to stretch for days or weeks becomes shorter. The emotional walls that once felt impossible now have small openings in them. They begin sharing things without needing to be forced. They reach out without waiting for the perfect excuse. They slowly start choosing closeness instead of merely tolerating it. And that difference matters deeply. Tolerating closeness means they stay emotionally near because the connection is strong enough to pull them back. Choosing closeness means they are beginning to trust the relationship enough to remain emotionally present inside it. That is where something important changes. The relationship may still not feel easy or flawless, but it begins feeling more mutual. You no longer feel like the only person trying to hold everything together. The emotional effort starts flowing in both directions. You begin sensing their intention more clearly. Their actions slowly start matching their feelings. Their returns no longer feel based only on loneliness or longing. They begin carrying understanding and emotional responsibility too. And eventually, you recognize something important. The connection survived not because it was simple, but because both people slowly changed enough to hold it differently. That is one of the hidden truths behind these relationships. Some connections are not meant to remain exactly as they started. They are meant to transform the people inside them. And if genuine transformation is taking place, you will see evidence of it. Not just in emotional words, but in behavior, in steadiness, in emotional honesty, in the growing ability to stay connected without treating vulnerability like danger. So if you are dealing with someone avoidant who repeatedly comes back into your life, do not only focus on the cycle itself. Anyone can repeat a cycle. Anyone can leave, miss you, and return. The deeper question is this: what is actually changing inside the cycle? Are they becoming more emotionally open over time, or simply more comfortable assuming you will always wait for them? Are their returns bringing more clarity and honesty, or only more confusion and inconsistency? Are they learning how to communicate before shutting down, or are you still carrying all the emotional weight by yourself? And just as importantly, look at yourself honestly too. Are you becoming calmer, stronger, and more secure inside this relationship? Or are you becoming more anxious, emotionally exhausted, and disconnected from your own needs? These questions matter because the same relationship pattern can either produce healing or emotional damage, depending on what it creates inside both people.